Hello and welcome to the Fire Officer Project podcast, a show where we will discuss and learn together about topics specific to the American Fire Service. Come along as we explore areas such as firehouse traditions and culture, the fire family life, leadership, as well as getting yourself ready to be the company officer. This show is for everyone from the rookie firefighter to newly promoted officers. I'm your host, Mark McCurdy. Now let's get on with the show. Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Fire Officer Project. It's been a few weeks with the holidays, and now kids are back in school, and I got a little bit of time to get back on track here. So episode 6, we're going to talk about organization. And what I mean by that is organizing yourself and getting yourself ready. As a company officer, we're going to have a bunch of topics we're going to talk about. I'm going to read a section from another book that I really like, and we'll go from there. So I hope you enjoy episode 6. Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Fire Officer Project. It's been a minute here, and today is January the 10th, 2022. So Happy New Year. Took a pretty decent time off there with the kids being off school and stuff going on at work, holidays, things like that. But I want to start being more consistent this year and expanding a little more. But this is going to be that first episode after the new year. And we're going to talk about organizing yourself. So a little bit more on the admin type side of the position or being a company officer. A little bit on ops, but nothing crazy. This is going to be more of an admin type thing, but I think it also sets a huge basis. Again, that's what we're setting up these first few shows is kind of a foundation of where to start from. And then we'll start getting into some other things. So what kind of topics are we going to hear today? We're going to talk about time management. That's a big thing. Command presence, your morning apparatus routine, your morning office routine, a notebook that I carry. I call it my command notebook, whatever you want to call it. I'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk a little bit on leadership. As I always mention, some of these topics kind of naturally delve into it, but we'll focus a little bit on there with a little bit of reading from another book that I like to recommend to people. And then we'll have a couple little scenario type things, and not necessarily in this order, but those are my bullet points as I look at my notes here. And so we'll break it down as I go from there. But before I start any of that, I wanted to talk about something that just happened recently in our department a few days ago. We had a line of duty death on the morning of January 6th. In Rancho Palos Verdes. It's one of the contract cities that we support or supply services to with the County of LA Fire Department. I'm not going to go into any details. A lot of the information is already out there, so it may not be new to some of you who've heard this. Since emails and videos and YouTube and everything gets this information out quicker than anything, I'm not going to mention anything about what happened because I don't know enough. There's always going to be rumors, and to perpetuate rumors and to try to pass those off as the truth is not good, especially in a situation like this. So what I wanted to do was acknowledge it. This firefighter was killed in a residential house fire. Firefighter Jonathan Flagler, Engine Company 83. Happened about almost 3 a.m. on January 6th. So, like I said, at early stages, it's only been a few days. We're still trying to figure out what's going on, waiting to get all the information and facts, but it doesn't change the outcome, unfortunately. So, what I'd like to do is just take a moment of silence in his memory, and at the end, I'm going to talk about some things and kind of mention some support that we may be able to push towards the family. That I can point in the direction of. So take a moment of silence for Firefighter Flagler. All right. May you rest in peace. It's never a good thing that this happens, and it's been a pretty decent amount of time that this has happened in our department. And it's, even though I didn't know him personally, it's never easy when you see a person that has the same patch on your shirt as you do. It's never easy when you read an email because it almost seems like daily There's emails of some firefighter getting injured or killed. I should say more killed. And a lot of injuries. And sometimes it can almost be the norm, the accepted, but when it hits your department, as some of you who are listening to this have gone down that road, it's never easy. So remember to look out for each other in these type of situations and try to help each other out. Try to work through it. And there's not much more I can say about that. So I don't want to just push it to the side, but I wanted to make sure we acknowledged it and go from there. So, okay. When it comes to organizing yourself, well, let me take it back here for a second. I want us to kind of maybe stay on that same subject. Look at the responsibility that you're asking for as a company officer. Now, I'm not going to point fingers at anything because I don't know enough information. Unfortunately, with this job, sometimes things just happen. And I'm not saying that's what happened here. But imagine you have that weight, right? Everybody talks about it. I got to make sure my personnel all go home safe and that. But when it doesn't happen, what's that going to be like for you? So unfortunately, we'll never know when that's coming, right? So is life. You don't know when it's your time. But think of the responsibility. So what I'm ultimately saying is take it seriously. Okay, we've had a couple structure fires just in the battalion that I work in the last couple days, and one was the day, the 6th, and immediately, first thing, having my probationary firefighter going in, it makes you double check what you're doing, just because that was so recent and so new. So anyways, what I'm saying is, if you're listening to this, you're probably already on that serious path, but just realize sometimes it gives us that gut check to really pay attention to what we're trying to do and focus and try to do our best effort to stop this from happening. But we all know that that's out of our control sometimes. Okay, let me get back on track here. So we're talking about organizing yourself, having an organization, those bullet points that I first talked about at the beginning, topics that we're going to hit, not necessarily in that order, but I'll stick to somewhat of a framework. When it comes to being organized, sometimes you don't know what you don't know because you're in a new position and you don't completely understand what you need to do or what right looks like. That's kind of a term I like to use a lot. What does right look like? Whatever it is, operations, administrative. So you don't know what you don't know yet because some of the things were not covered because a lot of times we don't really focus on the admin side of trying to get people ready. We focus on the operations because we're so worried about performing at that first structure fire and how we sound on the radio and delegating, and we don't think about the other side that is a lot more of your time than operations are. We just kind of put a lot of weight into operations because that's, number one, what we like, and number two, it's kind of where you get put to task when people say, is he a good fireman or not? Sometimes I'll let the admin side stuff slide, but I'll explain to you as we go here why that's not always the best plan. So there's so much to this new position, company officer, captain, lieutenant, whatever it may be called in your department, that you want to start learning these things early. So say you're not promoted yet, but you're going down that path and you're trying to gain information and maybe you're getting ready to this year. Maybe this is your year. Whenever your test may be, or maybe it's next year, or you're just starting to get on that path, start early and start learning good habits from your mentor that you found. And not just operations, because a lot of times we already have a pretty decent background on how to do this job. It's the other side that can trip you up because there's so many little things to it. So when you look at the big picture, sometimes getting promoted isn't necessarily that hard. Yeah, you got to study a ton and you got to perform, whether you're doing interviews or green cell or whatever it may be. Yeah, that part's hard. I'm not downplaying it. But as soon as you get the bugles and you're sitting in the seat, that's where it becomes hard because it's just so new and you're trying to learn all these things. So let's just break it down. Like I said, we had those physical classes a couple weeks ago, the early part of December, late November, and where we started with that group of people that are getting promoted. was out on the app floor, getting their morning apparatus checkout done. Now, whether you're coming from the back seat to the front and in that position, or you have already been the driver, engineer, chauffeur, whatever you may call it, yeah, you have a routine, but each position has their own routine, your different responsibilities. So how much of a routine do you have as a company officer? I'll just say company officer or captain because that's what I'm used to, but you know what I'm talking about. So you have to have a routine. You can't just go in the morning, put your stuff by the rig and be like, I'll just throw my stuff on when we get a call. You can do that. And sometimes that's okay. Throw your stuff there close to the rig, go find the person you're relieving, grab a cup of coffee, BS a little bit, get the changeover, and then come out and stick to your more solid routine. I get it. You can work through that. I'm not going to go that far into the weeds. But what I'm saying is when you leave your stuff on the hook, you're having coffee, you haven't changed into your work PT attire or however you start the morning, and you're BSing in the kitchen and you get to run at 8 o'clock. First off, that doesn't look good. Well, I should say 8 o'clock because that's when our official start time is. Although we get there at 7, if not earlier. You know what I'm saying? You have the people that are scrambling to get their stuff, but they've been there for an hour. What do you think that does to your reputation that the guys you know are watching you? And that, once again, I say captain for this, guys for that. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to sit here and try to correct every politically correct thing because it's a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? The crew, the guys, whatever it may say, nobody gets butthurt here because if you are, then turn it off because I'm not going to go back and correct everything to say it the proper way. I'll do my best, but I'm not going to fix everything. So you got to have that morning routine as far as checking out the rig, where you store your gear, where your radios are, even down to, do you keep your turnout coat next to you up in the cab or do you keep it in a compartment outside? Because we talked with this group and we say, okay, what do you think? What does you prefer? Because where we come up with that is you're driving back from a call and a structure fire car goes out. Do you ask the engineer or tell them to pull over so you can get dressed? Or do you have all your stuff close to you there and get dressed? Now, obviously, you're riding without the seatbelt on. That's a no-no, so figure out how you want to do things. I'm not telling you what to do because some people have a difference of opinion on that. So do what you think is safe and what is acceptable or part of your department. If your department has a hard and fast rule, then stick to that. But you know what I'm saying? Have a place that you put your gear a certain way, all your access to things, even down to pens, a steno pad to write on in case you're running the incident, glasses if you need those. All that stuff needs to be set up and ready to go because you don't have time to try to look for it all. Checking out your radios, going through and scrolling through and checking. Right now, recently, we just came where we have each individual firefighter has their own personal radio. It's pretty cool because we can show up as a unit now when we start getting really nutty with wildland fires or backfilling, and we're good to go. It takes the major element of trying to find backup radios and antennas for everything, all that. Now the person shows up, they're all an individual unit. They're good to go. We just need to secure the apparatus and get them on there. One major big thing that we can take away is the radios. But for us, each apparatus has a rig radio attached to it, handheld portable rig radio, plus your personal one. In our department, we operate in a 2-radio system still as a company officer. Tactical channels, command, we can scan all that, but I'm not going to get into the weeds of why we do that. But what I'm saying is have a routine to how you check out your radios, whatever it may be that your department uses. Don't be the guy that steps off the rig, you didn't check your radio, and it's noon, and the thing's chirping because the battery's low. Doesn't look good, right? Because you didn't check out your stuff. Fine, we all slip. I slip all the time. But I'm trying to do is curb those things for you just so you're made aware of them. Have that routine down. And not only are you getting yourself ready for the day, but what do you think the personnel are doing as they see you do that? Do you think you're building trust in them that you know what you're doing, you take it seriously, but you're also abiding by the expectation? Previous episode was expectations. We talked about SOPs and all that, and I'm not going to revamp that whole episode. If you want, after this one, go back and listen to the expectation ones if you haven't, and it'll kind of tie it all together. But you should have an expectation from your crew that they already know. But if you're not doing it and you think you don't need to do what you expect them to do, your reputation and your ability to tell them or for them to take it serious is going to go in the toilet. So twofold. One, you're checking out your gear a proper way, including BA, thermal imaging camera, whatever you may have that's your responsibility. The rest of the rig. It's funny because it's almost sometimes where people they're not used to the company officer or whatever going around the rig and looking at the compartments. Because every once in a while I'll get somebody that it trips them out and they'll be like, oh, what are you looking for? I'm like, nothing. I'm just checking out the rig. I'm a part of this rig as anybody else. If I need to run back and get something, I need to know where it is. I can't just go, oh, it's there. I don't need to worry about that. I'll send somebody else to do that. I'll delegate that. No. I like to look around. Now, if I worked a couple of days in a row, do I need to do that? No. But if I've been gone for a few days and I come back, same thing I would have done as a firefighter or an engineer. I just give it a quick glance to make sure I know where everything's at. And then it just puts another set of eyes on things in case we're missing something, something's broken, whatever it may be. So you're part of the team. Where else was I? Look at my notes here. So like I said, you want to let the crew see you doing the right thing. That builds a reputation for you and an expectation, and it reinforces it, and it's never questioned. It just becomes the norm. And another thing that it does, you've all been there in the morning, right? It's most apartments relieve in the morning, or they have a split shift or whatever it may be that comes in. Listen to the banter that goes on the apparatus floor while the equipment's being checked out. Sometimes it's just talking about what they did on their days off or a trip or whatever, and they're still kind of working through things. Sometimes it's straight complaining about something that's broken or missing or whatever shift isn't doing their end of the job. There's a lot of that, but just listen to what's going on and just listen. You don't need to engage right away unless it's something that is critical or something you need to curb right away. Just kind of listen to what's going on and what they're saying because it tells you a lot. And with this job, sometimes, or this position that you're going to be in or already in, just listening is a huge thing. And sometimes it's hard for people, right? Because we're mostly alpha type personalities that we got to get our point across and give our 2 cents. You really have to focus on listening, taking all the facts in, sometimes not even come up with a decision right then. I find myself a lot of times holding back or thinking. And if I have to think more than 10 seconds about something, I tell them, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Or how I want to accomplish it, or let me discuss with the other captain what we want to do and things like that. So, like I said, a lot of these things are just my personal recommendation or experiences I've had. Doesn't mean it's the right thing. I just like to put things out there for you to maybe look at a different thing or shine a different light on something. But this one I've noticed is big. If you're out there checking your equipment out, you listen to the banter that goes on and what's going on, and sometimes you'll hear them say, hey, I really need to train on this, or maybe we can do this. And at lineup, you bring that up. Hey, what were you guys talking about with so-and-so's not doing their job, or this shift, or this is broken and needs to be fixed, or what you mentioned something about a drill that you wanted to do. Not only does that help you get a drill scheduled for the day, but it's something that they're interested in or whatever it may be. You just shows that you're paying attention to what's going on and you're addressing it, not ignoring it. And granted, believe me, there's times where I'm like, another drill. But I slap myself across the face. Sometimes maybe I have to do it literally. And go, come on, what are we here for? That's what we need to do. Yeah. Do I feel like it all the time? Of course not. I'd be lying if I said I did. But what always happens when we start doing drills, things get brought up, people start having fun. At the end of it, we always say is, we need to do more of that. It's contagious. So sometimes there's days where you're like, we're not doing squat other than the daily stuff and what we need to do. And then there's other days where you're doing 1, 2, 3 drills just because it's one of those days where everybody's motivated or one thing leads to another. It's cool. It just bounces back and forth. So that's my 2 cents on checking your apparatus in the morning. You don't want to get caught not having your stuff, especially if it's later in the day. First thing in the morning, something happens. Yeah, okay, fine. Work through that. But if it's consistent where you're a bum like that, or you don't check it out and then you get caught with your pants down because your BA was low, TI battery was out, your battery's chirping on your radio, that's on you. You should expect to be labeled a piece of crap. So fix that. Don't get down that path. All right, so I'm explaining kind of how we do things, but I'm pretty sure Most fire departments are the same. You check out your stuff in the morning. Now you got your office responsibilities. Time management in the office takes a bit to understand and learn because, one, you're not fast at it unless you've really put a lot of effort into doing the office stuff prior to getting promoted with someone. It's going to take you a minute. And that comes down to us putting people on duty and paying them right payroll, and there's certain ways to do things, and it depends on what staffing program you have. Like I said, I'm not going to go in the weeds on some of these things, but you have to have a morning daily routine. So if I was to break down what we do at our station and our department, for myself in the morning, if I'm assigned to the engine that day, I put the people on duty and pay them. I do the morning report, which has to do with staffing. We have to log in because of our tablet and put the crew on duty, our EMS tablet, put the crew on duty on there as well. Check email and then see what needs to be done. And then I'm all set. Where the truck captain has to put out reserve unit status. They have to know what reserve rigs are available in our battalion in case something happens. And then he puts out a morning message to the whole battalion. So we separate the two things. And the only reason we do that is because we're a headquarters station. So everybody has their own job is what I'm saying. And you're going to get it down after a while where you're pretty fast at it. But those first few months or weeks or whatever it may be, if you haven't put a lot in, it's going to take you a little bit. You're going to be slower. That's fine. Normal. All that does is just eat into your time for the day. So, I'll talk about what I'm talking about there for a second. So, and then I have to line out what we're going to talk about at lineup. And I write everything down because I can't remember everything. I'll just put little bullet points. This needs to be completed by this time. So-and-so's the cook. We have this drill. We're moving up here, whatever it may be. I write it down in bullet points and then give that out at lineup. So I have everything written down. And we talked about lineups and expectations and things like that, but I'll just recap it in case somebody hasn't listened to the other one. There's going to be all kinds of negative things that you don't like to have to do, which is admin stuff. A lot of people don't like the admin stuff. I get it, but it's a necessary evil. So if you're going to take this position, a company officer, and you're going to run the excuse of, oh, I'm not an admin guy or I'm not a computer guy or whatever, then you got one of two options. Be that clown who's going to get labeled really quick with the chiefs because they're going to get tired of your crap really fast, or just don't take the position because that's what you're signing up for. If you think you're just going to ride in the front seat, right front, run incidents, pick where they go to lunch and do all that stuff, that's cool. That's part of it. Yeah, whatever it may be, however you do it in your department. But there is no ability to have that excuse. Oh, I'm not this guy. I'm not a computer guy. Okay, well, you better be. Otherwise, you're going to be labeled as a turd. Which, hey, maybe you don't care. But it's not going to go over well for you. All right, so how do you stay organized? It's all trial and error. You're going to have to try a path this way. Yeah, that didn't work so well because my time, it takes me too long to do this, and that. Figure it out by trial and error, how you want to do things. And I'm not trying to overcomplicate this and say that it's hard. It's not. None of this job really is, right? It's just organizing and talking to people and getting things handled. But you have to have realistic goals. And what I mean by that is, I used to do all this stuff. My first spot that was promoted to was an engine company with a paramedic squad. So I had 6 personnel, including myself. I was the only captain at that station for the day because it was a single engine. I would write things down like, okay, we're going to get these 5 things done today. And then you realize that that's not practical. It ended up, after I realized maybe I can get these 4 things done today, then it was about down to 3. And then after about 6 months, I realized if I can get 2 things done I want a day, that's a win. Because we're not like gaining any more hours in a day, but it sure seems like we're getting more things added onto us. Whether it's training or online training or classes we need to go to, drills, calls, cleaning the station, getting ready for inspections, whatever it may be. The days aren't getting longer. You're just getting more crap pushed into them. So reality is maybe you're one of those people that can knock things out really fast and you push the crew constantly. You have to give and take on that. But I got it down to where I wouldn't say, oh, we're not going to get anything done. But if I get these 2 things done today, good. Small chip away. Next shift, a couple of things, small chip away. Versus trying to do 5 things, not getting anything done, and then it rolls into the next shift, and then the next shift, and then the next shift, and you're not getting anything done. So you can kind of see where I'm going with that. A way to avoid that is on the mandatory stuff, get it done early. A lot of times we have mandatory training that has to be done. It's not like they send it to us and it's due next week. Unless it's something super, super critical, rarely does it happen. We usually see the email, says you have to have this completed, and it's usually a month to 2 months away. What happens when we see something that's a month or 2 months away? Don't even think about the job. Think about your daily life outside of that. Do you do it right away, or does it go on the back burner? I'm going to say most people, it goes on the back burner. When you have a deadline that's 2 months away, nobody wants to be, oh, let's do it today because it came out. I'm not saying doing it that exact day that it comes out, but keep your finger on the pulse and just push the crew to get it done sooner than later. Because we all have the person who the day that it's due is going to come and go, and you're going to still have to ask them, did you get this done? And you're going to have to chase after them. Which isn't fun because usually that's the same person doing the same thing over and over and over again. And the chiefs and the people above you don't want to hear it. They just want it done because there's always something else to move on to. And a lot of times it's not that difficult, but yeah, it can be a pain in the rear on some things. But so what? It just has to be done. And guess what? Next year, probably going to have to be done too. So a lot of these things are done annually, whether it's performance evaluations, mandatory training. It's going to be there every year till you retire. So if you want to complain about it every year, go ahead. But try to step away from that now as a company officer, because what you say influences your crew. So I had talked about that in a previous episode too, is not being the cancer by dumping on some of the things that need to get done. Because ultimately, we're there for the mission, right? We're there to influence and affect the mission of the department. If you're constantly negative and complaining and bitching about this and that, what do you think your personnel are going to do? The same thing. They're going to think that's the norm, and as they promote up, they're going to think that's okay to do. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Perfect. I'm not. I get sick of it too, especially when we start getting mandatory multiple days in a row, getting up on calls, we're short-staffed, bad call, whatever it may be. I'm human too. I can easily run my mouth and say stuff that I shouldn't, which can affect. I'm just more aware of it as time goes by, and I try to do my best not to complain. But I'm not impervious to that happening. So sometimes when you tell people, hey, you want it done early, you get pushback because they're always going to hark back to the deadline. But when you make it the expectation that we're going to get it done, especially on days where we don't have a busy schedule, try to remind them or fit that in to have it, just get it done. Hey, let's knock this out and then we'll watch football or whatever, or we'll make dinner or do whatever. Let's see if we can all get it knocked out and be done. Because what happens when you actually complete something? Do you get that sense of accomplishment? And I'm not saying this is great sense of accomplishment because you did some paperwork online, some mandatory training. But the more that you free yourself up from stuff that you know is on a deadline or on the back burner, you feel better as you get it done. So I like to influence people and say, hey, let's just get it done. Now, if I have weeks and we got a lot of stuff going on the first couple of shifts, I'm not doing it. But it's those times, right? We're not always constantly busy. We can make it work. And you just want to stay on top of it because you don't want to let it fall into the category of deadline goes by and you're the only crew that hasn't done it in your battalion or your region or whatever. Then you become labeled the one that the chief has to come after and tries to find everything. So I think you get what I'm talking about there. Let's see. All right. So as we talk about the office, there was something that was brought up from a visiting battalion chief the other day who told us a story, and I don't need to recap the whole story, but make sure that you're looking at not just the daily way of running your station. When you're finding that mentor and that person who's going to help you months, year out, 2 years out, try to look at what a whole year looks like. And what I mean is we have quarterly inspections, and they range from just an inspection on our safety gear and the building, the station itself. And then a couple months will go by, and each shift has this. They get 4 inspections quarterly. It just rotates what order we do it in by flip-flopping so that the apparatus inspection isn't one day on the C shift and the next day on the A shift. It's quarterly busted up. So everything gets looked at 4 times on the different subjects all throughout the year. So I think you understand what I'm saying there. But what I mean is we have an inspection, a building inspection, records. We look at our records, apparatus, and then our annual division inspection, which is our big one where we clean the station like crazy. And it's our big inspection. And that's where the assistant chief comes with the battalion chief. And we do, could be 2 hours. I've been on ones that have been 8 hours long. Just depends on what that assistant chief wants to do. The other quarterly ones are done at the battalion chief level, and there's an expectation to that. So if you have something similar, this chief was stating how he failed a brand new captain on inspection because the minimum standard wasn't even met. And what I mean minimum standard is the paperwork where you walk around with the chief, and everybody's done this. If you promoted in our department, you've done this or seen this somewhere. But we start to slip and think, oh, it's not that big a deal because the department doesn't make it, but it is. Where we have the records printed off, everybody that's on duty is on this paperwork, and you walk around the clipboard with the chief, and you just look like you actually give a crap, and you look like a professional part of what you're really responsible for. Not just the daily running calls and everything, but sometimes we got to take this job serious. The order and the paramilitary type to it is important. And if we start letting that slip, where do you think the minimum expectation is going to go? Just lower and lower and lower. So some people look and they listen to the chiefs tell this story. And he's like, I failed him and said, we'll come back when you're ready. Some people, oh, what a dick, blah, blah, blah. He's not being a dick. He's not letting the expectation get lower while he's in this 30-year window of the department. And I can appreciate that. Now, do I think that we have to be hardcore all the time? That, to me, that's not hardcore. If you think that's hardcore, just stay in the position you're in, because that's not. That's just doing proper paperwork and actually giving a crap. And I know sometimes it can be hard when you're being mandatory multiple days, and just like I had talked about earlier. But when you think of it, at least for our career guys, and that's our career, and volunteer might be different. I don't have enough experience understanding the volunteer world other than some dedicated people that are voluntarily doing things. I can't complain when, as a career, you're usually making a pretty decent income. So think about it. Think about what you want to do, how you want to represent yourself, the responsibility, and how you want to perceive and do your job. So, all right, let me move on here a little bit. I bullet pointed public speaking. And what I mean by that is you're now going to be the main person that everybody turns to and looks at. As a firefighter or an engineer or chauffeur, whatever you call it, right? There's those calls where you look and go, what's the captain going to do here? Or what's he going to do on this call? Or the public comes up and asks something or comes to the station and needs something, and you're like, I don't know. What do we do? Beep, beep, beep. Right? We page out the captain because that's their job, right? They should know more. Probably, I wouldn't say they're always have more time on than you, because that's not always the case, but maybe they know a little bit more. Well, that's you. That's you now. So talking to the public in a different light than you're used to is going to be something new. If you haven't thought about this, let me enlighten you a little bit. When I was a firefighter paramedic, yeah, I can talk to people all day in an assessment type manner, patient assessment type manner on medical aids. No problem. How much interaction do we have with the public and speaking with them on fires? Nothing. Traffic collisions, all that, whatever. It's fine. You just talk to people in an assessment type way because you're on to the next thing, or you're following up to the hospital with them, or whatever it may be. But as a captain now, you're not doing that. Even as an engineer, when I was driving, right, that even less time of me talking, standing back holding a flashlight, jokingly. But even if I wasn't, and I was assisting the firefighter, because we have 3-person engine, I'm taking a blood pressure or whatever, but I'm not really talking to people. So when you go from the driver to the company officer, you've already been, depending how long it's been, you don't really talk to people all the time like that. Now, granted, okay, yeah, there's exceptions to everything, because our engineers can be fire prevention inspectors and all that. That's different. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about station life. Because now you're going to be talking at lineup, during business inspections, visits to the station from the public, that need certain things. Like we write tumbleweed burn permits for people for the year in certain areas, not every area of LA County. Some people come in and hydrant permits. They're going to hook up to a hydrant and the water company's approved it. And you're going to get people that go, what do you do with this? And you hand it to them. And now you need to speak with the public. Now, business inspections, I say business inspections because a lot of times you're teaching the newer firefighters and engineers how proper business inspection should look like. Our annual go through and just check extinguishers and extension cords and all that stuff. But you got to talk to people like normal. You're constantly representing the fire department, right? We joke about it when we piss somebody off or do something like, oh, we just lost votes. Or, hey, we gained a couple votes because we did a good thing. And I joke about that, but you're always thinking that, right? Like, you're trying to keep people that happy. Now, we do pretty well with the fire service as most of the time people liking us compared to the police. But we can step on our own meat, right? Like, we're not impervious to people hating us, especially when times are tough and our paychecks are steady for the paid peeps. You know, it's like you have to remember that. But you also have a different role on EMS calls. Like, I talk to the family members constantly, and now we have tablets, so I'm typing on that, and the medics are typing on, and then we kind of match our programs, however it may be. But you're doing a lot different style of speaking to people and controlling the scene. And then for us, since we're the EMS provider, the one that I notice sucks the most is, you might do it differently, but it seems like a lot of times, or maybe I'm just a sucker for it, the captain has to be the one to go tell the family when their family member has died. Let's say a full arrest at home, and on our protocols, we stay on scene and try to get everything going. We don't just scoop people up and shoot them over to the hospital. There's times now where our policy has changed in the last couple of years where we're leaving people at home and we're not transporting them. And most people see a different picture of what they think is supposed to happen because of TV, which is 95% wrong of what we do when you watch these shows. Now you're that person who's going and telling them their family member is dead. What's the next steps to help them? Things like that. It's a weird spot to be in, but you take that experience that you've had and you get better at it. Even though it sucks to say you're getting better, you learn how to talk to people. So what I'm talking about when it comes to public speaking is you need to be ready to talk to people in a different way, in a more compassionate way, in a more intellectual, in keeping the department in the proper light type things. So just think about it. I'm not telling you it's that hard or you have to take some class, but you're just going to have to start looking at things differently, the way you speak to people and what your role and responsibility is now as a company officer. All right, let me see here. So switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk about just this command notebook that I carry around. And for those of you that have been around a little bit, you might remember this thing called a Trapper Keeper. And if you don't know what that is, go look it up, because I won't do it justice when I try to explain it and you're just listening to me. But basically, it's a big binder with a zipper that goes all the way around it, maybe some type of fabric and some pouches on the outside or whatever it may be. But for those of you who know, and for those that don't, just look it up and Google it, whatever you want to do, and just see what I'm talking about. But it's 3-ring binder that zippers up and keeps contained. And I take that thing with me everywhere. And before I got promoted, I noticed there was a decent amount of people starting to do that. Now there's a lot more people starting to do it because there's just a lot of things that you need to have with you that makes it easier when you have it in a notebook, especially a department the size of ours. I can go work in overtime somewhere, and I really don't need to find things in their office, say the apparatus door breaks or this happens or I need these forms, and I'll talk about it here in a second. Basically, my goal with the command notebook is to have command worksheets, which I don't necessarily pull out on a big incident and start writing on like a battalion chief or where I'm really, really developing this thing out. I use it as a reference, these command sheets as reference for training, or when I haven't done an incident of a certain nature, because we have them split up: brush fires, structure fires, confined space, swift water rescue, all the things that we could potentially have. We have a command worksheet from, and I think most departments do. But earthquake, like say we had an earthquake, there's a certain procedure we have to do in our department. And how often do you think I have to pull that out? We do it once a year as a practice drill, but it can happen anytime. And you got a whole bunch of stuff going on. I use those as a cheat sheet. So that's what's in there, as well as numerous pens, pencils, highlighters, a steno pad or a writing pad in case I just need to write things down. Forms is a big one, and I'll come back to the forms when I'm talking about. I have a little screwdriver, a Craftsman, tiny, small, flathead screwdriver. I've had that thing since I've been a fireman, and I worked in West Hollywood. It's kind of like the famous Sunset Strip with all the clubs and all that stuff from back in the 80s, even to today, and even prior to that, Led Zeppelin times and all that stuff. So we got a ton of fire alarms there, but the buildings are old. And I use this flathead screwdriver to fix manual pole alarms. I keep that in there. That one's big. I take that with me when we go on manual poles. I've used that thing so many times. And what I'm going to do is take pictures on the Instagram account and post it, and it'll link to the Facebook account if you follow that one or our Instagram. And I'm going to kick that out just after this episode's release, so you can see what I'm talking about. Email contacts, phone numbers. I keep a list of important phone numbers in there, and people are like, well, we have our phones. You don't need that. Well, true. But occasionally, what happens, we have a lot of stuff. We have department-related apps. And sometimes those apps are down for maintenance or whatever may happen. Then I just want to have a backup plan. And it's stuff that I've acquired throughout the years. Like, oh, this person I call for this specific thing. I write it down. Or this person is the person to call for this exact thing. There's so much when it comes to the department that I can basically take it with me wherever I work and feel comfortable that I can operate out of it without having to go through an office or having my phone or whatever. But the two combined, my phone and this, it's perfect. I have everything I need for the day. What else do I have in there? Okay, so the forms. Biggest thing is the forms. I use the hell out of the forms in there. And what I mean is we have forms that we give people after a fire or a car fire or whatever for insurance reasons. There's one of two things. A lot of times, what do? We just clean up. Oh, sorry about that. That sucks to be you. And we leave. We don't do a good handoff. But you need to start thinking customer service. I found a copy of Chief Brunacini from Phoenix, is a whole thing about customer service, his book from a while ago. I found a copy at one of the stations, and it's older, but that's my next read because he had a lot of good things that he's always mentioned. He's known for customer service. And I'm going to start reading that. So, but anyways, what I'm talking about is we have this insurance form that these people will call if they need a fire report. I hand it to them before they even need it. So what I mean is sometimes they'll turn it over to the insurance and the insurance goes, well, we need a fire report. And you get that from the station, and it cuts out the people having to come back to the station and get this form. So I hand it to them. I write the incident number down, station phone number, go, here you go. Here's your form. If you need it for insurance, this is what they're going to request. Perfect. It's just something to give somebody as we leave and pack up and just get that little bit of excellent or extra customer service. What else do I have? So for ICS forms, and I don't know enough about other states, but for us, we have wildland stuff everywhere. So in the area I work now, and pretty much our whole department has the ability to be part of this. We have to leave a form. It's called a 213 form, ICS, for when we leave wildland hose, wildland packs, teas, whatever it may be. If we're leaving in a place on a fire for a bunch of days, we need to account for it. So we have a form that we fill out. And it's kind of a generic 8.5 by 11 blank form. It is blanked, actually. And you're supposed to write what you left. 824 barrel nozzles, 8 100-foot sections of wildland hose, stuff like that, right? Well, it's pretty much always the same thing. So to make it just a little bit easier for you, because a lot of times you got to fill these things out after you've been getting your butt kicked up on a hill for hours, trying to pull hose and put out this brush fire. I have these things pre-printed out. I have all the things that we could potentially use with a box next to it, and all I have to do is fill in the quantity that we left. 8, 8, 8, 8, all the way down, sign it, give it to the operations or the division. Here you go. Take a picture of it. We're out of there. I can be out of there in 2 minutes versus somebody who's got to think about everything that comes in a smoky pack, which is our wildland hose pack that we carry up the hills that you may have seen when we get brush fires. You have to write everything as an individual piece, so that can take you a while. Plus, when you're dehydrated, hungry, smoked out, pain in the ass, right? You're just like, I can't think what to write. We had these forms pre-printed out. Boom. I send it, give it off to the person. A 214 is another form that we use to log, like when we go on strike teams or wherever and we're protecting certain neighborhoods, we're almost supposed to keep a journal. I keep those forms in there. Injury reports. I keep injury reports and paperwork that's going to need to be filled out if somebody was injured and taken to the hospital on the rig with me. That way I don't have to go back to the station to try to gather it and dig it out. I have it there. So if the ambulance takes this injured firefighter to the hospital, we show up on the engine or whatever we need to do, come pick him up. I have all the paperwork there. Paperwork for the doctor to sign, whether it's going to put him off on days off, light duty, whatever it may be. I keep all that stuff in there. And then I keep a few other forms in there, but they're kind of specific to our department. But one other thing we have is this pamphlet called After the Fire. It's not necessarily a pamphlet, it's a booklet. And we give it to people because, like I said, we go on people's house fires, we destroy the hell out of it, we clean it all up for them, we throw all their crap in the middle of their driveway, and we leave. And we kind of just like, okay, see you later. Well, to add that extra level of customer service, we have this pamphlet. And they're everywhere in every station. And I had another captain who was mentoring me saying, keep these with you, and you hand these out. And you hand them out to people, and it explains to people what's next, how to get their power back on, how to get their gas back on, how to make an insurance claim. Look out for these people, board up companies, whatever it may be. Insurance scammers. Not that those people are scammers, but I'm saying there's all these things, these factors that when we leave, swoop in on these people. Or that they're going to be responsible for. So we give them that. And I've read through it, and it's pretty informative. But on the very back is a perforated page that tears off. What do you think that is? It's a grading sheet. I'll never know if it gets sent because it gets sent to our headquarters. But I'll never know how many people have sent that in saying they appreciated what we did, or we sucked, or we made a mess. We never hear, but it's on the back because we actually do care about customer service. We're just not always the best at it because we come and provide something really quick and we're out of there. And then we have a little bit of different interactions. So, but anyways, that's my thing on the commando book. Like I said, look for posts on Instagram. If you don't follow us on Instagram, it's called The Fire Officer Project, all spelled out like that on Instagram. And I'm going to reference pictures on there about this command notebook. Maybe it does a little more justice than maybe what I'm explaining. So that'll be soon after this episode comes out. And then we're getting near the end. I wanted to talk about a couple things that have to do with a little bit of leadership, command presence. Read a page or two out of a new book that I want to suggest that you pick up. And all right, I had to take a little water break there because we're coming up on almost 50 minutes. Goodness, probably already sick of hearing me talk about these things. Okay, so I talk about all these things that, even though I say they're not down in the weeds, they're a little bit down in the weeds. But I just want to make you aware of them. And I bring up these items and things because it leads into the next couple things. Everybody wants to know about leadership, and you're in a leadership role, and I throw a question out there. It's like, well, how do you become a leader? Well, just because you took the test and got the bugles and got promoted to whatever that is at company officer level for you doesn't mean you're a leader, right? We already know this. Is there natural ability that people have? Yes, but that's in all ranks. Just because somebody doesn't promote up the chain doesn't mean they're not a leader. There's natural ability. There's learned behavior, right? Learned things that you've learned along the way that you wouldn't have known until somebody showed you. And there's a combination of both. I think that's what makes a great leader. Doesn't matter. You don't have to have quarters or bugles or whatever we want to call it on your collar, or a different helmet shield or something that identifies you as the person in charge. Because we've all had the crappy leaders, right? The bad leaders that you're like, I can't believe this person's in charge. So we're trying to avoid being that, right? So how do you become a good leader? Well, a lot of it is, I think, and I'll put a lot of weight into it, and you'll hear it every episode, having a proper mentor. A mentor, or somebody that guides you, or somebody that you look up for that does it right for the most of the time, right? Not everybody's perfect. We're all going to have those things where we stumble. But I think it starts there. Plus, I think there's a lot that has to do with natural ability and then people's willingness to make themselves better as a leader by studying books, going to seminars, taking classes, having those mentors. Sometimes working with a crappy leader or person in charge almost helps you, right? Because you know exactly what you don't want to do. You say, well, that guy's an idiot. I'm not doing it that way. But, okay, there's a combination of all those things. So that thing, I can't sit here and say, okay, you need to do this to be a leader and this. It's a learned behavior as far as a combination of natural ability and your willingness to try to make yourself better. But do you think that some of the things that we talked about, if you were to do it the proper way, like checking out the rig, having a good routine, expectations, things we talked about in other episodes, do you think that makes people think you're a good leader? Maybe. I would hope so. Because you actually care and you have their interest in mind. You have the department or the mission in mind. You have your ability to try to get better in mind. It's going to make you that natural person that people want to flock to, or you're in that position maybe where you're looking for the mentor, and then soon one day you're going to be the mentoree or the mentor to other people, and we're going to pass it on. And I think that's my whole goal with this, is just pass on some information and become that. I'm not saying I'm a leader, but I'm not going to hide it and say I don't try to be one or do research on it or study, because it's what we took this test for. So as far as promoting. So I think most of the people have heard the term command presence. What does that mean to you? Do you earn it? How do you earn it? What is a command presence? Are you able to walk into a room and people know immediately without you saying anything that you're in charge? On an EMS call, I wouldn't say, okay, am I in charge? No, I'm not necessarily in charge, because that's the paramedics that are in charge of the patient. But you know what I mean as far as in charge of decision-making, a supervisor on scene. As I talked about, talking with the public, you just have that air about you that you're the person in charge. You're not necessarily throwing your weight around, but you know what I'm saying? That's your command presence, right? You can have command presence as a paramedic too, because that's big. People have to know that you're in charge. Otherwise, they bowl over you. They try to ruin your assessment or tank it, right? We have these where patients are just tanking these things. We call them intern killers, where they're just giving you every chief complaint under the sun. And I'm not even going to go down that road, but you have command presence in all ranks or positions. But now as a company officer, you have to have command presence in more than just on scene. Do you need command presence on EMS calls? I think so. Fireground, for sure. What about in the station? Do you carry command presence of you're the person in charge and you're going to make good decisions, thinking about, like I said, your crew's best interest, the missions, then maybe yours, however order you want to put it in, and you have to correct and say it the right way. But you shouldn't have to remind people that you're in charge, right? If you have to say because I said so or because I'm the captain, number one, do you think people don't know that? Number two, if you have to say that and remind people, then something else is wrong. But you have that command presence to where it's unspoken. People already know, because all that stuff we talked about at the beginning of the show leads towards that command presence. You're not just a bum that they're like, oh, this is a bad leader, I don't want to be with this person. So if you don't appear organized, you can be chaos on the inside or feel like you're going to crap your pants on certain things because you're like, what the hell do I do right now? To me, if you don't at least appear somewhat organized, you're not going to have a good command presence. Now, are you supposed to know everything about everything? No. But you need to know your limitations, how you work through that, and how you get help from people to make that incident go away or to make it better. So you just have to be a little organized and have pre-thought some of these things. Otherwise, your whole thing is built on a house of cards where you just crossing your fingers that something big doesn't happen. Because I guarantee you, it's going to one day, something's going to happen big that you're just not ready for because you didn't take the time to try to prepare for. Now, can we control everything? Obviously not. But you should have at least thought of a few things. And one thing I have a certain topic about that I don't think I brought it up in expectations, but let me think here. Do I even want to bring it up? Well, let's just say this. What you look like is the expectation that you set, right? So you can have all these things where you are organized and everything else, but if you look like a hot mess, meaning uniforms or whatever your department states is the minimum or will be the uniform, don't try to enforce it on other people if you're a hot mess. And I don't know that we really need to go talk about uniforms and everything right now, but to me, if you appear organized, you look organized, you don't have to set the expectation. You should mention it of what you expect, and I talked about in the other episode about expectations, but if you look the part, you do the part, you're already continually reinforcing what the expectation is. So anyways, okay. So enough about that. One day I think I'll break down the uniform thing a little more when I do a little more research and read, because there's certain things to me that get brought up and was brought up before I was promoted by chiefs that say, we look like a mess because certain battalions wear this, we allow guys to wear this, we're not all on the same page. And at the time I was like, I don't know, whatever, who cares? But the older I get and the more down the road I get and the more I realize in this position that public perception is a big thing and how it looks, then I kind of understand their point. So, all right. What I wanted to do is look at a page and just read from a book. So another book that I've just purchased recently was a book called No Exceptions Leadership, The Leadership Handbook by Jason Hovelman, Battalion Chief from Missouri, North St. Louis County. And he writes this book. It's not too long. It's 145 pages, and each individual page is a, what would you want to say? He has a number to it, and then it's just a bullet point type set of things on each page. It's pretty good. But I'm just going to read one, and then I'll probably relay back to this one throughout these shows as we go through. But on number 2, just because you have been on a team or led a team for a significant amount of time, do not take for granted that your members know something. Sometimes it is very appropriate to state the obvious. Over-communicate when the information is time-sensitive, involves safety of your crew, team, or customer. The information needed is long and complicated. When history dictates the need for added conversations and direction. Just to make sure everyone is on the same page, to correct any accuracies, or to reinforce you're all in and on task with the team. So communication, right? Trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. And that comes from them watching what you're doing, going back to staying organized by checking out the apparatus, the office, how you carry yourself, how the office looks, how you present things to them at lineup, and then communicating information that is sometimes you can't just assume that they know. And what's funny is my wife has brought up to me a few times where she goes, why do you repeat things? Like you tell me, and then we have a conversation, and you repeat it again. And I've noticed, and I kind of laugh, go, thanks for bringing that up, number 1. Number 2, it's because I think I've gotten used to doing that to make sure we're on the same page and overemphasize that we're both on the same page. There's minimal room for error on things that are important. I don't do it to everything, but sometimes I think she thinks I do because she's not used to it. And even down to the point where I send her a text message and I know she gets it and understands, but she doesn't relay back to me that she got it. That drives me nuts, but that's comes with the fire department thing side of us, right? We like the echo back that copy, I copy, your copy, copy, copy. So it's just different when it comes to looking at people that are in this career and do it all the time and the way we do things and are used to. So it makes me laugh sometimes. But anyways, take a look at this book. I'll once again, as I put posts out on Instagram, I'll snap a picture of this and put it out there. And very good book and other good ideas and full of things. And I'll reference it more in the future. But I want to wrap this up. We're coming up to an hour. So hopefully this helped you with some things. And like I said from the beginning, a little more maybe on the boring side because it has to do with admin. But I think it's a big one because it does bleed into how you do things operationally as well. So any suggestions that you have for other books that maybe I haven't mentioned or read? Or there's a ton. I have a bunch, right? There's a list that's everywhere, and I'm trying to get through them as quick as I can, but it doesn't mean I'm aware of things. So I'd appreciate if you send me any suggestions for books, classes that may be available, leadership classes, fire department classes. If you have something that you have going on that you want me to mention and promote, I know it's not as consistent, but if you want to send me for the podcast yet, but if you want to send me a message on Instagram about a class or something that you're putting, I have no problem pushing that out on my platform as well too, to get more people aware of it, just to get more eyes on it. So if you want to do that, I'm open to that as well. Send me anything that you want me to post on there within reason. More so that has to do with fire service related things, and I'll put that out there. I'm working on a website right now that's going to link everything and make things a little bit easier, maybe communicating through email and a blog or however it may be, but I'm getting that developed as well. And as I said, I'll post some pictures not only on the book, but the command notebook as well. So you can send it to us by email, thefireofficerproject, all spelled out like that, thefireofficerproject@gmail.com. That's the email. Instagram, one more time, is the Fire Officer Project. You can send comment on any of the pictures or a direct message, and I'm pretty good about getting back to you. So thank you for taking this time to listen to this show, and if you have suggestions for other shows, I'd like to know that as well. As we close the show, I wanted to go back to what we talked about at the beginning. Donations for the Flagler family are being accepted. There is a QR code, and I'll link that as well on my Instagram. There's a QR code that can be scanned. If you feel like you would like to donate to their family, you can do that. Access. Don't wait for me though, because if I'll get it out there, but just in case it goes by me or it goes by you or you don't see it, LA County Fire, LACoFD Instagram account, multiple things that have to do with LA County Fire are going to have that QR code up, that if you feel like giving to the families, I think it's a GoFundMe type situation. I'm not exactly sure that it's GoFundMe because we have a credit union that we link to through our department. There's that. So if you feel inclined to do that, we would appreciate that. Once again, it's only a few days since this incident happened, and it's still, it's crazy because I didn't know him personally, but like I said at the beginning, it doesn't make it easy when you see a person that is wearing the same patch as you. And this happened, so I don't know, there's not much I can say about that. But if you'd like to donate, look for that QR code. I'll put it out there as well. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Send me anything that we talked about above to the email or the Instagram. Take care, keep moving forward, and be safe.